The top 10 things worth staying in for. This is Staying In.
What I generally hate about episode 100s on other podcasts, other big like sort of momentous episodes, is that it's always really, really like navel gazy. As in, like, it's always really, like, well, when we started this, it was really good, and we never knew it would be so big.
We never knew we'd get this far.
Does Pete know what we're doing in this episode?
I don't know.
But your navel's looking pretty good, Pete.
Thanks, man.
That's good.
You got some good navel going on.
Yeah, this is episode 100. I was trying to think, I was just brushing my teeth then, and I was trying to think, what have I done 100 of?
I hope you've brushed your teeth more than 100 times.
I was thinking like unique things, because we just had some sausage sandwiches. I'm pretty sure I've eaten 100 sausages. I've only played 46 games of Doppelt So Clever, so I think this is probably the only good, like, unique 100 of a thing that I have done.
I mean, they're staying alive.
What?
What do you mean?
100 days.
For 100 days?
Yeah, I've done more than
I thought you watched the film Staying
I mean, there's a lot of things we've done
100
more than 100
Is there a
times.
film called Staying Alive?
Yeah.
Is there?
Travolta.
Isn't that Saturday Night Fever?
It's a sequel to
No, that's a
Saturday Night
song in Saturday Night Fever.
Fever. No, the film's Saturday Night Fever, and the sequel is Staying Alive.
There's a sequel.
There's a sequel.
I'm fairly sure that I'm right in this.
Hang on.
Oh, man, I really hope it was supposed to be a trilogy.
Well, what would the third film be called? Go on.
That'd be it, wouldn't it?
That was the title of the film.
It's a prequel.
Oh, right, okay. And a bit of a public service announcement, of course, that is the music you should perform CPR to.
True.
Yeah.
It's the perfect rhythm. I love it when I see Pete's face go, what? As he just missed a bit of popular culture over the top of his head.
Yeah, you do not know
So
that.
Get your Spotify out.
So the song Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, ironically, is the exact speed that you should perform CPR at.
Staying alive.
You
Staying alive.
Whether you sing it or not is up to you.
Yeah.
That
I
doesn't-
mean, to be fair, it's more fun if you do. I mean, admittedly, you're not in a particularly fun environment when you're doing that. But
Yeah. Do you have to pay, like, royalty fees and stuff like that?
I'm pretty sure the Bee Gees are not going to come knocking down your door for the time you save that person's life.
I don't know. They haven't made some money in a few years.
What do you mean they haven't made money?
Well, they haven't
yet?
released any songs in a few years, have they?
You know they
But
get
that's
paid
not how
every
the
time
music
someone
industry works, Esther.
plays their
And also,
They're getting more. I'm not quite sure. This is tangentially.
Yeah, can we just get on with what we were actually meant to
right,
be
what
doing?
are we
this
supposed to be doing?
So,
then?
Pete, why do you hate 100 episodes?
Oh no, hang on. If you want to bury the lead, and don't go back to Willington.
Yeah. So what we've decided to do for our 100 episodes is to really navel gaze. And I looked back across every...
Oh, I started it.
No, you didn't.
I gave you a list.
No, you didn't.
I did.
You didn't.
I gave you a list to start with, and just
No.
because you ignored it.
I didn't know where that list was. I tried to look for
I'm
it.
going to find
Mum and Dad
send
are
you a
fighting.
link.
Yeah,
There's a list of
I don't
topics.
like it.
There's a list of topics we haven't covered on the show, but on the sheet there's no list of topics we have covered.
I'll find this and I'll show it to you.
Okay. Well, anyway, from scratch.
Yeah, I'm providing Foley. This is the piece of paper that you've printed all of these things
I
out
printed that.
Well, no. Blood and sand. So I went back to all 100 episodes, made a list of all the topics we've covered on those 100 episodes,
Yeah.
and we have each picked out our top 10 things from those episodes. And over the course of this episode, we're going to try and pick our collective Staying In top 10 things of the last 100 episodes.
Cool. Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so we've all picked our unique top 10s.
Yeah.
Yep.
So where do we begin? First
Do
of
you
all,
want to go through each of our top 10s? And then we can start breaking them down?
we possibly could do. I think we should also do the rules. I think this is a democratic process. If something gets 3 votes, it's in. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that's
so.
fair.
Yeah. The majority.
yeah. Majority
Otherwise,
rules. That's the only rule, really. And there's 10 of them.
Okay.
Okay. So let's read out each of our top 10s, and then we'll go from there.
Can we like bang through them? I'll tell you what. I'll bang through. mine.
You show us pace and speed.
I'll
that
show
we
you the
should be
pace at
reading
which we're
them
going to do this.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm going to read my top 10, right?
Okay, good.
No explanations. You
No
know
order,
what they're about.
Just
Right.
Yeah, and this is in no particular order. Like, number one
absolutely.
is like your favourite.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
weeks.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
So my favourite 10 things are Stardew Valley, Star Realms, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective,
Mhm.
Batman Role-Playing Game, Project High Rise, Bart Bonte Games.
Okay, yeah, because we kind
All
of
of them.
covered some of the colours. And
Yeah. Trackmania Turbo, Dread, UK Games Expo, just because we've been a couple of times, all of them, and Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. And really that means just sort of like miniatures stuff.
Okay.
When Pete said, we need to go through this quickly, I was expecting to like really rattle through. That was the pace that I was intending to go at.
Yeah,
so I'm not
that's-
quite sure why you were like, we have to go fast.
Okay. I can go fast. Shall
No,
I go
don't
fast?
go-
Don't do it again because it takes more time than
Oh,
if you
right.
went
But I'll
fast.
do it really fast.
No, don't.
All right.
Chris,
Yes, Sam.
your top 10.
Okay, here they are. Let's reel them
Thank
off.
you.
The Good Place, His Dark Materials, the TV series, Uncharted, the collection, Oxenfree, Dear Esther Live, Night in the Woods, Return of the Obra Dinn, Burgle Brothers, Pandemic Legacy, and War of the Ring.
Lovely.
Okay.
Dan.
Mine are Uncharted 4, Oddworld New and Tasty, Dread, The Adventure Zone, The Good Place, The Mind, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, Hamilton, Mary Poppins Returns, and His Dark Materials, the TV series.
This is
Fantastic.
very, very nice radio.
All right, okay. Well, my top 10 is finally Cosmic Encounter, Dread, XCOM 2, Monikers, Celeste, Taverns of Tearth and Fall, Knives Out, The Good Place, Pandemic Legacy, and The Crew. So immediately we've got 3 things in this list that all have 3 votes each.
What are they?
So they are, well, Dread
Yeah.
by Dan, Pete, and me.
Yeah.
We have The Good Place by Dan, Chris, and me. And also Uncharted in a way. Dan, you were Uncharted 4, but Chris, you had
Let's just lump them
Uncharted.
together.
Should we just lump the Uncharted series together?
Those incredible works of art. Just lump them all together.
So already, are you writing these down, Chris?
No, that's what I was just saying. I haven't got a
Oh,
pen.
right, okay. Go and get a pen from the kitchen.
Off he goes. More Foley.
Oh, by the microwave.
That's where the pens are kept. Of course. Any colour.
Okay, so already the list is a third complete. Well done, everybody.
Oh, we're going to bang through this. Yeah.
Okay, so the list, so already in our top 10 are the Uncharted series, Dread, and The Good Place.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about these?
Yeah, I think it's worth talking about, like, why people have picked them. So, yeah.
Well, and this is kind of a big theme for like all of the things that I picked, is Dread is a game that I experienced with like all of you. So, or like I feel like it's a thing that we all did.
Yeah.
And like that to me is a big part of like the appeal of it, because it was the first time that we really did like a role playing game together, like a narrative game together. And also, I remember just coming up with fun, silly stories, but also being a bit spooky and all that kind of thing. And it was just it is like the perfect entry gateway RPG, right?
So what is Dread, just in case anyone doesn't know?
So we talked about this in episode 13, I think, of the pod.
I mean, it's written down, so the fact that you're pretending...
But I was doing it in a roundabout, casual way that seemed like I'd pulled it from the annals of my memory.
Let's not pretend that we have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything that's gone on.
All
in
right,
every single
okay.
episode.
Jeez, let them behind the curtain. So basically, it's very simple. You have a tower of Jenga, but you can't call it Jenga in the game of Dread, which basically represents tension, essentially, in the game.
Yeah.
Anytime the players get to a difficult decision, the game's master may ask them to pull from the tower. And depending on how successful they are pulling that block and placing it on the top, that may affect the outcome of the narrative. In a particular way. So very simple, very elegant.
It essentially replaces the dice in that, like, you roll dice in an RPG when something non-trivial happens that might change the course of the direction of the game.
Here it's very black and white, whether you succeed or you fail, basically.
Well, what it does then as a result is it puts the emphasis more on the storytelling, because the Jenga isn't used as much as dice would be in a Dungeons & Dragons and stuff like that. So it's more about telling that story. And I think, Pete, from what you said as well, because it was on my list, it was, as you say, our first kind of experience with RPGs. I think we talked about it in the past, and this had just come up, and we decided to give this one a go. And we've obviously tried lots of different ones since, but this was the one that kind of made us go, oh yeah, this actually is something that works really well for us. This whole storytelling collaboratively.
I think it's really thematic, like the fact that Dread just deals with, as its name suggests, like tension and, these sorts of Jenga-esque tower games. That is also what they are all about. It's about making sure that, it gets across that tension really nicely. And I think also it's a much nicer way of handling skill and decision making rather than just rolling a dice and being like, oh well.
It's very thematic in like you are carrying out a tense activity whilst also being asked to like prove yourself narratively.
One of the things,
whether you can do something. So like it might be that you want to like dress a wound or attack a character or open a door whilst something's chasing you. So the act of like drawing from a tower feels very physically connected to the action that you're doing. And I remember when we were making our own versions of Dread stories, I for one was very particular in terms of like when I would make you draw and try and make a real strong physical connection between the two actions.
Yeah.
Because I was going to put 10 candles in my list because I think
10 candles just missed the cut for me. That I was in the same way. I was very tempted to put it in.
I think 10 candles is like if you play Dread, then you'll like 10 candles is a nice sort of way to go upwards.
To me, it's just a case of we played Dread first.
Yeah.
And it's also, but also we kind of, I think each of us had a go at creating a custom narrative to graft onto it more or less.
And you can easily like,
I didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't do it.
All right. Okay.
But
the thing is, the people that did have a go at creating their narratives, like we iterated it on every version. So like Dan did the very sort of vanilla Dread, and we got used to it. And then
so mine was very kind of basic in terms of I led it a lot more than you guys did because we didn't really know how we'd get on with it. So it was my first time ever playing an RPG, let alone being kind of the narrator or games master, whatever you want to call it. And so I did kind of railroad it to an extent because I didn't really know how it all worked. And then, as you say, Sam, when you then, I think you did you do the next one?
Chris did the next
one. So Chris did the next one, took it a little bit further, obviously gave us a bit more freedom because we were all a bit more comfortable in that space. And then
I put a traitor mechanic in it, I think, as well.
Nice. Yeah. And I did a whole like gambling thing. So Dread's in there is excellent. And
the thing I took away from it
good
is like seeing you guys be really creative and stuff with it was really inspiring and did sort of suggest that like, it gave me the sort of impetus to actually go and think about this stuff and try and be a bit more creative, which I think is...
So I remember at the start you saying you had no interest in doing kind of creating something in that kind of world. Whereas now you are the opposite and you're really enjoying that process and you were kind of like, I don't have an imagination for that kind of thing. And now as a result of these experiences, you've now thought, actually...
You're now more obsessed than any of us.
Yes.
So Dread's in there of our top 10. All right, the Uncharted series. Chris and Dan, this was on your lists. And who else's lists? 3 of us?
I think it's only on 2 of us. I wasn't going to argue because it was on my list. So I'm just going to let it get in there.
2 lists.
All right, okay. So let's just do Good Place first because that's a 3-er. So that's in there. The Good Place wasn't going to be on my list
I think
until the final episode of the series, which I thought was an exceptional piece of television and makes it worth watching in its entirety.
I thought that first series was excellent.
Oh yeah, the first series was excellent, but I think it definitely dipped.
The Good Place wouldn't have been far off my top 10 prior to the finale. When I saw the finale, it had such an impact on me that it jumped up towards the top of that list of one of the first things I wrote down because I found it quite profound what it was able to do. And I think Sam had mentioned to you kind of separately that it's very rare for a series to finish in such a way that so perfectly matches what that show is. Shows can finish very well, like Breaking Bad, fantastic finale for what it is. The Good Place, I think, more than any other show, finishes so perfectly, kind of note perfect. It was just blew me away. It was like an hour-long episode, and I just sat there afterwards just thinking, I can't believe they've done that in terms of just the term is really sticking the landing and my God, probably they stuck it better than any other show I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's basically about a lady who wakes up in the afterlife, the good place. She's died. She's coming to terms with that. She's also come to terms with the fact that she appears to be the wrong Eleanor Shellstrop. And so she has this kind of doppelganger kind of syndrome of, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be here. I should be in the bad place, and how she tries to blend in. But it's so much more than that. Whereas other series would make that the whole premise. She has to try and keep that a secret. They will take in it, and they'll do stuff in an episode, which usually some people would do in a whole season. So it goes along at quite a blistering pace, really. I listened to the podcast that Mark Evan Jackson, who plays Sean, hosts, and he calls it the smartest, dumbest show on television. I think that's a really nice way of putting it, because for every kind of philosophical kind of debate it kind of engages with, there's always like a fart gag as well to counter that to some respect. Yeah, and it's tinged with this beautiful bit of sweetness as well, which is just really, really lovely. And it's just
because that's the thing that hasn't actually been brought up in this part of the conversation is basically it is a comedy.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, like it's really funny. It's got probably my favourite joke ever in it.
Go on.
It's the one about, I won't ruin it, but it's the one about who died and made Aristotle.
Who died and made, no, who died and made Plato head, and it's like Aristotle did, or something like that.
I think
this landed.
I think it's the other way around.
Well, anyway, yeah. If you want to hear that joke properly,
yeah. By some people who know what comedy is.
It was actually funny when I watched it, because my wife was watching it at the same time. She just hasn't really watched The Good Place, so she was kind of dipping in and out of it. Yeah. But she kind of watched the finale, so I got it on, and afterwards she was kind of like, "Did they just solve the meaning of life?" And I was kind of like, "Kind of." I was like, "That's kind of impressive for, as you say, a stupid." Kind of smart, dumb comedy. I was like, that's wild.
Cool. And so it's in our list?
Yeah. 20-minute episodes, absolute breeze.
So let's start tackling some of these twofers. So Uncharted is a two for two people. Chris and Dan, I guess you got to make your arguments about why it should be in the top 10.
I put down Uncharted 4. Chris, you put down Uncharted Collection. We're kind of bringing that together for the sake of ease. For me, I put down Uncharted 4. I've never experienced a game quite like it. And what, in terms of that, I love an action adventure games, and some of the stuff that game was able to do and the experience it gave me, I've just never seen anywhere else. I've never experienced certain levels and sequences were just stunning. And it's a series going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, which has improved in my mind every single time. And every single time you're kind of like, how can they possibly improve that? That's such a fantastic game. You look back on it now and you're like, oh my God, they had still so far to go. When you look at Uncharted 2, which when it came out, everyone was like, this is just incredible. Compare that to Uncharted 4, where you're like, we didn't know there was this amount of space to go to. We thought they were kind of at the peak of what they could do. And they've just gone so far and beyond. I just think it's such a feat, and it's just probably my favourite gaming series of all time.
They are pretty solid, and I think it's important to think about Lost Legacy in this, because I actually don't want to ironically lose Lost Legacy, because that's actually the most recent
Lost Legacy game. Almost made my list.
Yeah, I wondered whether it'd be on yours.
It's the most fun I've had with an Uncharted game in a long time.
It's the best Uncharted 4.
It doesn't outstay its welcome.
It's close to it, yeah.
But I like the three because they are ridiculous games.
The first three,
yeah, it's like the original kind of Mummy films or whatever. Like that ridiculous farcical, and I want that sometimes. And the thing I love about Uncharted is that I can just pick it up whenever, and I'm back in there. Not so much of a steep learning curve, and it's hilarious. It goes along as a pace. The relationship between the characters are quite nice. The vistas, the worlds it takes you to, are just beautiful. It's like the quickest holiday for me. It really is.
The thing is though, it's like it always gets praised for its storytelling, and rightly so. But I think the thing that ensures that it is able to do good storytelling is the fact that really all they're doing is Romancing the Stone or Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
But the fact that like they start off with that series being those kinds of, a video game equivalent of those films, and they're fairly straightforward narratives, and then earning over the course of 5 games the ability to do the impactful stuff towards the end, like that that is really impressive. Like that's because I think if you'd started this series off with the kind of storytelling of Uncharted 4, I actually think it'd be very heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Whereas the fact that we've grown up with Nathan Drake, the fact that we know what he's like, we're like, oh, like there's always that he's kind of just like that, and they explore that in Uncharted 4. That I think they earn the narrative payoff that they get with 4 and Lost Legacy.
Yeah, 4's beautiful. The ending as well. We're talking about endings of The Good Place. The ending of 4 I just adore.
I think for me, what I value about the Uncharted series more than anything else is that it demonstrates the thing that I love about console gaming in general, which is that I love the idea that you have something like Uncharted, the first Uncharted game, and then the second Uncharted game comes along and it looks completely different. You know, the production values are all heightened. And that's what I love about the console game, is the fact that that game, Uncharted 2 and 3, existed within the PS3.
Yeah.
They were there when the PS3 first started, the potential of those games.
Sure.
And I love being able to see how developers unlock that potential from a console in a series. Yeah. And it's something hopefully we'll get to see with The Last of Us Part 2 as well. And it just boggles my mind that like consoles act in that way, that just like that potential's in them from the off, and it just takes that,
because you have that set technology platform,
yeah,
and therefore, and because it's only doing certain things, and you know you can specifically target a certain hardware set, you can't, like, developers can then go, okay, well, we can get it to do this then, if you know, we can do these tricks to make it look as good as this. Like in Uncharted 3, the is it the third one with the boat that turns upside down?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would have been absolutely unthinkable at the start of the PS3.
Yeah.
Like that kind of the way that gravity and physics works in that space.
But the potential was always there, which is what I love. Like that was always there in the PS3. Like that sequence was always in it.
Yeah.
It's that's what I love about this thing. It's just like, it's almost like I don't know if this is too sort of glasses off the nose from me, but just like, I just love that thing about like the Big Bang created everything that ever will exist and nothing else.
Right.
So I just love the fact that the PS3 is almost like a microcosm of that philosophy. Right. Like everything that will ever exist,
a potential space,
is already in this box, and it's up to everyone else to kind of get it out of it.
Yeah,
I love that.
So that Borges short story, the Library of Babel, where it contains every book that has been published, but it also contains every combination of words. So it's also got every single book that will be published. In it as well.
Yeah, that's great.
It's quite cool.
So shall we put it? Do you
want to put it on the bench, like in the midpoint between being on there? So it's
no, it's definitely in there.
I think it's so. That's our top three. Well, not our top three, but our first three. So we do have a couple of twofers. One of which is Pandemic Legacy. So which is quite prescient at the time, because Chris and I have just started. Yesterday we did our first month and the prologue of Pandemic Legacy Season 2. And it was playing that game that actually Pandemic Legacy was a late switch in for me, because it was only at starting Pandemic Legacy Season 2 that I remembered how great Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is. And really it as a franchise, as a brand. Like, I went up into the loft to pick apart our copy of Pandemic Legacy just before we started Season 2 to remind myself of like who the characters were, what happened in terms of like betrayals and incidents, and how the drama unfolded over those 12 months. And unlike any other board game I've played, all those stories just came flooding back to me. And the next day I like showed Chris some of the stuff, and we're just like, yeah, that was that guy. Remember when he did that? And then, oh, there's the traitor. Like, oh yeah, I remember when he did that. And like, we had this like dime that we were using to scratch everything off, and I got that out. And like, we were naming characters for Pandemic Legacy Season 2, and we've named one, and they share a surname with the person who turned out to be a traitor in the first season. So like, narratively, we're already being able to like weave these strands together of like these stories that we're creating. And in terms of like a board game series to share with someone else, it's been Yeah, it's the one that sticks in my mind,
Yeah, I agree.
and I'd recommend to anyone really.
It's just like it's a bespoke game. Pandemic, probably the most famous cooperative board game in existence,
Yes.
where you essentially cure the world of diseases. A legacy variant, meaning just the game remembers each time you play, so stuff you've made, decisions you've made, you now have to live with the consequences of those in next games, whether that's upgrading more powers or cities now that are completely lost.
Yes.
And so you play 12 games, which each one a month. If you fail a month, you get to repeat it, as it were, and it's just that pleasure of you were talking about it before. There are boxes in that game box that are waiting to be opened with all these kind of narrative twists and turns, and depending on the choices we make, we have no idea what we're going to get there. And I had so much of a fun with season 1 in terms of just opening these boxes, new pieces coming out, new rules being added or taken away. Caring about a character that could get a scar that will severely impact us. It's
or a
incredible.
character that could die.
Yeah,
in season 2, it's got this excellent mechanic called exposure. So if your character gets exposed, at the bottom of your character sheet, it has these 7 little scratch card things, and so you could scratch it off and nothing could happen. You could scratch it off and you maybe get a scar, which like gives you 1 less action point or hampers you in some way. You could scratch it off and you could just die. You could just reveal a skull, and then that character would be gone, and then you'd have to create another character to replace them. So it's that part of it where you feel like you're actually fighting a tangible force as well. Like it doesn't feel like a false sort of, oh, we're just creating the story out of nothing. I think Arkham Horror sometimes feels a bit like we're sort of just fighting random elements that we have no control over, where Pandemic, Legacy, both games have both felt like they are genuine things that we are trying to fight against that have been crafted by a designer. Because Dan, you've got Pandemic Legacy Season 1, don't you?
I do.
You haven't played it yet.
I haven't played it. That's only because I've struggled to find someone to play it with.
Okay. But
sad face.
But if you'd asked me and I had the time, do you want to play it? Like, I'd jump at the chance of just like, yeah, I'd play that again.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Because it's been so long also, I've forgotten some of the
the
minutiae.
Yeah. But for me, it's just like, in terms of board games to recommend people, like the Legacy series is the pinnacle of that genre.
Treat.
And it is a treat, like, to know that you've got this thing that you can share with someone or a couple of people over the course of like 12 hours or even more, like 19 hours. That's why it's in my top 10. It should be in our top 10, really. But I think we should put it on the site. I don't know.
I think you guys should put it in.
You think so?
Yeah, I
Why?
mean, I couldn't give a toss about it, but like, but
I'm glad we're not going for unanimous kind of.
But the thing,
you wait for the ones that Pete's ones.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is that like the way that you guys talk about it, it's not of interest to me because I just find Pandemic generally, it's just not a game that has ever gelled with me. I don't know what it is. I can't quite explain it, but it's just never something I've been particularly interested in. But the thing I am interested in is hearing the stories that come out of it and the experience that you guys have with it. And it just sounds like, it's been really lovely and like transformational in the way that you think about games. And I think that for that reason, it absolutely deserves to be on our list.
All right, so that's 4 things in. The last thing that has multiple votes is His Dark Materials, the TV series specifically, Chris and Dan?
Yeah,
yes.
TV series.
Okay, so not the books. How do you feel about His Dark Materials, Pete?
I saw the play about 9 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. What episode did we cover this on?
This was 92.
All right, okay. Straight off the top of your head there, Chris.
Yeah. So I saw the play, and that included the first book and a half, and it had the man who was James Bond for a bit, and he was the James Bond where he was the James Bond where the
Timothy
man
Dalton
explodes in the pressure chamber, and then the criminal man says, "What are we going to do with the money that's inside there and is covered in blood?" And then the other criminal man says, "Launder it."
Yeah, Timothy Dalton is actually
Timothy Dalton. Yeah, I think Pete's alluding to License to Kill.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes, License to Kill. So I saw that, and he played a man in his Dark Materials.
I love the fact what we had there was Pete Sorton Vidocton on stage, and this is where his mind went off to that James Bond film while the play was happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So I saw you in James Bond. You're James Bond, but you've got an animal. So I saw that, and I thought it was very good. Okay. But I've never read the books. I've never watched the TV series.
Okay.
So
So I don't think the TV series should be in our top 10, but you can convince me.
Why don't you? Why don't you think it should be in, Sam?
I think it did some interesting stuff, but in terms of like things that we have covered in the show, like there are TV series that I hold closer to my heart, and other things in my list that I would, you've got to ask yourself in terms of when you're making one of these lists. If I was to like put The Good Place in front of you, or say like Knives Out in terms of like visual media to watch, and his Dark Materials, which out of those three would you want to watch? And I'd pick the other two over his Dark Materials every day. I think it was just it was a great adaptation of the series, and they did some interesting things with it. But I just don't think that first novel is very interesting anyway.
But they still did a very good job with that first novel.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one for me because it is my favourite book series as a child was his Dark Materials, and I think to some respect I was so relieved that they did such a good job with the adaptation as opposed to the film.
Yeah,
that I think it's more the case of that really, and they're doing a greater job of world building than the novelist Philip Pullman had the ability to do at that point, because he didn't fully know where this was going, which obviously with hindsight they can kind of sow those seeds very early on.
And they can incorporate elements from future books into that first series, haven't they?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not wedded to it being in our top 10, I'll say that.
It certainly feels like one of the weakest.
Yeah.
I feel like it can go on the bench. I mean, A Peek Behind the Curtain, it was one of the last things that made it onto my list. Okay. So if it didn't make it into the top 10, I wouldn't be heartbroken. Yeah, but exactly. I would obviously.
So which out of your list? So if we say that's on the bench, then which out of your list, Dan, would you say has to be in our top 10?
I'm gonna lead with the podcast The Adventure Zone.
Okay.
I know we've talked at length in the past about kind of we're fans of the work the McElroy brothers do with their various podcasts, and this is the podcast that they made with their father, The Adventure Zone, which is the first series was a Dungeons and Dragons playthrough of an original story, which went to I think about 70 episodes.
69
episodes. I did say about 70.
They made a point of stopping at 69.
So it was a fairly lengthy kind of run. It was one of those things that, again, similar to Dread, and perhaps I'm not even sure if I started listening to it before we played Dread. I can't really remember the timescales. It was one of those things that got me like, "Ooh, this is a world I would enjoy participating in." Obviously, big fan of kind of McElroy brothers. Their sense of humor really kind of chimes in with my own, so that works really well for me. I think the story told was fantastic. The characters they were able to develop over many years were fantastic. They've gone on to do future series which I haven't listened to as much. That was a finished story. They then moved on to a new story with new mechanics and new engines. But this, I'm primarily putting in that first series because that was, I think, their most complete. They didn't know what it was to begin with, and it just developed organically, and the characters developed organically, not really knowing if it was going to become a big thing, and it just kind of blew up. And I think rightfully so. And I think it did a lot of things that I really, really enjoyed, and I didn't know podcasts could do, and that for me makes it worthy of being in our top 10.
It's also spawned a lovely graphic novel series.
Yeah, the graphic novels are something that I really, really enjoy from them. And for a series to get Dan to buy his first graphic novel,
it did. Yeah, that was
an exceptional. That's a powerful. Yeah. That's a powerful
I should have said that was a good argument for it.
No, I've forgotten about this. I must admit, even though you very kindly wrote that list out, Sam, actually how much of an impact the Adventure Zone has had on me, and how much I enjoy listening to the podcast, really. I recommend it to people, anyone who says they have a passing interest in RPGs. I said, you need to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I think on a realm of creativity as well, and how the series has gone on, like their new stories. I really enjoyed the one they did, Amnesty, with the Monster of the Week stuff, and they've gone back to Dungeons and Dragons with their new arc, which is, yes, Graduation, and that's it's just a really... I think Pete, we spoke about this on the show before about like how Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs is kind of like beginning to settle itself in the sort of consciousness of other people.
Of people who aren't absolute
mainstream is the word you're
Yeah, okay, into the mainstream.
Yeah.
So, and I think that that the Adventure Zone is part of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thing. I mean, I'd happy for it to go into, but obviously, Pete.
I'm fine with it going in as well. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things of like, it clearly brings so much joy to so many people that it's worth going onto that list.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I think it was episode 39 as well. We talked about it.
Okay, just off the top of your head.
Just off the top of your head.
Right,
No,
so Chris,
nice,
so
Chris,
that's
memory.
is that number 5? We're halfway there.
We're halfway there.
Oh my word! Right, I feel that like Pete is
Banking points.
all right. So
Those points are kept for nothing.
So again, if you were to pick one thing, let's just concentrate on one thing from your very, very unique list that you think should be in our overall top 10. Yeah. What would that be?
It's Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley.
Yeah, because like the thing that's happened to me over the course of like the 100 episodes that we've done has been like going from a person who's very, very, very intense and like always like very keen on like always doing, always like needs to do the next thing.
Episode 1, you're just shouting into the mic.
Clash Royale! Or whatever the hell it was.
I can't. Chris, can you find out what we recorded?
What was Clash Royale, Chris? Just off the top of your head. Your memory's really good, wasn't it?
Yeah, what did we do episode 1, Chris? Can you remember?
It was Marvel.
Something about DC, I think.
Burgle
It
Brothers.
was very...
Burgle Brothers was episode 1.
Yeah.
I remember that.
All that sort of stuff.
Was it Batman vs Superman or something like that?
That was episode 2.
that was like episode 2. The first episode, all I've got down is just Burgle Brothers. I think we were very much talking about other things.
But yeah, I mean, like for me, life-wise, it's been like lots and lots of stuff, playing games just to say that I've played the games and like all that kind of thing, and like really intensely going after things in my life that I wanted to do, either careers-wise or like outside of that. And like Stardew Valley kind of epitomizes how my mindset has changed since then. And Stardew Valley is basically it's a farming game that they used to be called like Life Sims, and it is a game in which you don't have that much control over success and failure. You have seasons in which you can, have certain crops. You have, you might have the odd lightning strike that ruins something for you. You might have, and it takes days and days and days of in-game time to actually grow these things out, these crops, and then you get a small amount of money, and then you invest it back into your farm, or you invest it into the people in the space. And for me, it became this game of I put an audiobook on and I play Stardew Valley, or I wanted to really just zone out and not feel like I needed to complete that next bit of the story. I didn't need to, and I could just come home and relax and do that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think Stardew Valley to me is a game that forces me to calm down. It's like a mindfulness game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that to me like is why it's on there, because it kind of epitomizes like my life over this period of time. You guys have all picked like the best things you like, and I've been like, oh, but it really reminds me about my life and
it is a delight.
the time with you.
It is also the best 10 things that we've talked about. So that's why we picked our best things.
I know,
but it is an utter delight, because as I've spoken about before, I was a latecomer too, because it was one of the first games I bought when I bought my Switch Lite. It's the only game my partner will watch me play.
Right.
Every night as I get my Switch before bed, she says, "Are you playing the farming game?"
The farming game.
I was like, I am now. Okay. Yeah. And there's just something like
I was going to play Mario, but yeah.
There's just something quite nice about
just relaxing.
Making sure I've got enough aubergines, or there's a fete going on in the village. Do you mind contributing something here? And it never pushes you or forces you.
No.
Oh, there's some objectives here. If you want to meet them, you can.
Every day I get up in the game and I go outside and I go to my dog and I pet him.
Yeah.
And that's me. And like, there's no real reason to do that. There's no, there's a tiny little bonus that you get that you find out later on. Oh, that's because you did this. But like beyond getting that bonus, there's no real reason to do it. Like, yeah, it's just, but that to me epitomizes what that game is about. It's about, being nice in that world. if there had been a new Animal Crossing out and we talked about it, that game would be on this list instead. Those kinds of life sim games, they really, really, let me zone out. And I think that to me is like what's important about it.
Yeah, I'm sold.
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, Sam. You did say three.
I mean,
three
three bakes. I can just press the button here, Dan, and like it just mutes your microphone.
I'm not against the game.
Tone says otherwise.
I'm not against the game. I enjoyed it when I played it on mobile, but it never really held me kind of particularly strongly. I enjoyed it whilst I was playing it, and I came back to as soon as it got to a bit where it felt a little bit grindy, I gave up. Sure. It didn't make me want to play through that.
But weren't you playing it like every day on the commute? Like,
yeah, but in short doses.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, with mobile games, I think that's the best way to play. Some of the best mobile games need to be able to be played like that. In Stardew Valley, you can play like that. But it was like, I got to the first period of winter, and in winter, you can't really grow as much because so you need to do all these stuff, and it feels a bit more grindy at that point. And I kind of lost a bit of interest. And once you fall out of that, I'm kind of thinking, well, do I want to go back into it? I'm not too sure. So I appreciate that I'm kind of outnumbered here, but I want to have my say. And yeah, it's fun. I just didn't have the same reaction to it that kind of
the same life-changing reaction.
Yeah, it didn't
everyone else had.
It didn't change my life.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll try.
It's a perfect anecdote too.
Put it on the list,
The world.
Chris. Put it on the list.
We're not that far in, and we're already 6 in. There's about another 30 things we have to talk about.
Yeah, but I think that we're not going to be speaking about everything in depth. Like, I'm sure you don't want to hear about me wanging on about XCOM 2 again anytime soon. Or Cosmic. As long as you may have guessed that we are all in the same room. As long as we get to play Cosmic Encounter while we are all here, I'm happy for it just to stay on my list.
I've noticed you've left the rule book out over there. Sam, what would be out of mine 10? Like, what has to make the cut?
I mean, I think that out of everything that I've got left, Cosmic Encounter, XCOM 2, Celeste, Taverns of Tears and Fall, Knives Out, The Crew, and Monikers. Monikers is probably the game that really has been like the core of all my family gatherings since we started. Since I've owned it, and it's changed, how I and how all our family look at party games and what they are, and it has been sort of, now whenever we're together, I'm always asked to bring it, or I'm asked where can people get copies, and what deck are we playing with now? Because now I've got like a couple of the different expansions and stuff, and out of all the games on those lists, it has the most memories associated with it. We're playing with family and friends, and it's kind of just from there we've gone on. Like 20-Second Showdown was another one that was very close to going in that list. Decrypto as well. Out of all those party games, I think that maybe we've had more fun with 20-Second Showdown, but Monikers was kind of that first one which demonstrated like to the whole of my family that like there was something a bit different than just playing Monopoly or Trivial Pursuit or any of the sort of like.
And that's really powerful.
Yeah, it's exceptionally powerful, and I don't think it should be in our top 10, but I definitely think that Monikers is always that game that I'll always bring up to anyone, because I think it's just a fantastic demonstration of a game which anyone can create at any time. You can make your own version of it. But the great thing about Monikers is having that curated experience.
Yeah.
And it's something we found in like games like Don't Get Got and Obama Llama. And again, 20-Second Showdown, when you have something that's curated for you and it just snaps, like absolutely picks up, and having like these great moments, like my dad trying to describe Tina Turner, but his surname's Turner, but saying instead her first name and second name have the same first letter as my last name. And my father-in-law trying to describe Colonel Mustard, but every time forgot what his name was and kept on calling him Captain Mustard. And it's just like, I don't think it should be in the top 10, but Monikers is just.
I think for me, I think Monikers is a great game. The reason I wouldn't have it in my top 10 is you touched on it there is. I've played a lot of Monikers, however, I don't own the game.
Yeah.
Because I've been playing basically Monikers for years.
Yeah.
But even before Monikers was made, because I played that homemade version.
Right.
And generally, there's certain friends where I get to, we tend to play the homemade version of Monikers. We all write down on bits of paper different names and different things, and then we play it. And I think for that reason, Monikers going onto the top 10, maybe not, because the actual game of Monikers I've not actually really played. I've played the DIY version, which is the same thing. I grant you, kind of having that curated, that in a box with nicely printed cards and all that stuff certainly adds to it.
Yeah, but what I mean by curation is not necessarily the presentation. It's the fact that
the variety of the items of that stuff, and I get that. That's absolutely kind of crucial to kind of the enjoyment of Monikers. For me, it doesn't put it far enough in order to put it into our top 10.
Fair play.
But I agree, it's a great game.
It is incredible.
Star Realms then?
Oh,
we've all played it.
We have all played it, and actually, recently, it's received a bit of renaissance in my house because I've had a massive inkling to play deck building games, and it's the only deck building game that I own. So, is it, Chris?
I'm trying to remember.
I think it is. Oh no, I have Temp Work Assassins as well, but it's not as sort of back.
That's a worker placement as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just say, full disclosure from the off? I don't like deck building games. I played Star Realms and I didn't get on with it, so maybe I should take a step back here because it's clearly I'm not going to want it in the top 10.
You sat down, Dan. So I mean,
okay. Yeah. Do you want me just to mute you?
Yeah, just
go for it. Yeah,
go for it. Yeah, bring it down.
I'll talk through your workflows.
Yeah. I mean, it's a game that we played together.
Yep.
We've. I would look forward every single morning, sat on the toilet to get your games come through.
Sometimes those peek behind the curtains aren't things we want to see.
He wouldn't leave the toilet until a game came through.
And it's a game that has jumped from podcast to podcast, from here to We're Not Wizards, where we would play with Richard.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's a game that you played the physical version of quite a lot with Veronica.
Yeah, that's correct.
Like the digital version, I think is like just a stunning achievement of a small team making a free-to-play card game that actually is like genuinely free and feels really good value.
Yes.
It's not like constantly nickel and diming. The presentation is really good. The game itself, the actual mechanics, goes without saying. It's like really, really great.
I think the only bone of contention for me with Star Realms is that I think it's like a great sort of £15 or like £10,
tenner or something.
Tenner box,
small
game.
box. Yeah.
I think it just that longevity though is we kind of like had this wave of playing it,
sure,
and then it's just like I requested a game with Richard the other day and he never got back with me. So I think for me it's just like one of those brilliant, fantastic games, but it feels like it's been a sort of like flash.
It's got a shelf life.
Yeah, it does have a shelf life.
I backed the Kickstarter for the not the latest one, the other one.
Yeah.
The one that was basically just like essentially a new version of it, not the deluxe one. And I must admit, like I've played it maybe once.
Yeah.
And it feels like a game that is very zeitgeisty, and you get it all with your friends, and then you all get like, I will put good money on in 6 months' time I might be like, lads, and then like try and encourage you all to play it again, and I reckon we probably get another couple of weeks out of it. Like, but it it's like that. It's like Polytopia, it's like Subterfuge, it's like those kinds of games where they'll come along for a period of time. I can't think about anything other than this, and then you just forget about it.
Yeah.
But I think it deserves to be on the list because of that.
Chris?
I'm not sure it should be on the list. Like, I really, really like it. I really, really like it. And it's one of those great games that, as you say, Sam, I could spend ages away from it. I could go back in and it's easy to kind of pick up. With the base vanilla game, 4 different classes of card, each has different types of powers, broadly speaking. There's just something still continually satisfying about, chaining cards, say, for example. But I tend to play it mostly on my own, solo, on my phone, really.
But that has a value as well.
I know it has a value, but that initial buzz of, 1v1 or multiplayer online has started to wane for me somewhat, I would suggest. I'd say.
So if not Star Realms?
If not Star... Well, Dan has got the Mind on his list, and Mind was sort of a I felt like Wolfgang Warsch needed to be represented in some way, and if Dan was putting down the mind, I'd put in Taverns of Tiefenthal as my kind of Wolfgang Warsch thing. And I think our top 10
Wolfgang
I genuinely think our top 10 shouldn't be without a Wolfgang Warsch.
He's had such an impact on us. Why, both of you? Why was that your number one Warsch game? This is like a separate spin-off.
I mean, that's probably a more difficult question for Sound to answer because
I've played a lot more.
Yeah,
I own.
And I think I've only played the Mind.
Oh, you only played the Mind?
I think that's the only one I've played.
Ganz schön clever. Doppelt so clever. Illusion. Taverns of Tiefenthal.
I've not played any of these.
Quacks of Quedlinburg.
So that's why I picked the Mind.
Bricks.
Oh yeah, which we talked about.
Basically, you'd like to give Wolfgang a little kiss.
Do you know he's a marine biologist?
Yes.
Really?
And he makes board games. I was like, what a guy.
That'd be difficult to give him a kiss because he'll be underwater.
That's how it works.
Under there constantly.
I agree because you guys basically just bang on about him all the time, and he's really. It turns out he's really good.
Yeah,
really good at designing games.
I think out of all of the games that we've talked about, the Mind on episode 60 is probably the one
good remembering there, Sam.
Thanks. Is the one where if this list is going to be like someone tunes into Staying In podcast,
episode 100,
episode 100, and we have this list, or in terms of something that we can have as like hey, if you like the kind of things we like, and you're just starting out, like here are 10 great places of where to start.
Agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
Then the Mind is kind of like, we had an away day at work the other day, and they asked me to bring some board games in, and I like the Mind was the first one off my shelf because it was kind of like, in terms of teaching, the teachers is easy enough, and part of the reason is just seeing people's faces when you explain to them, right, here are cards 1 to 100. All you got to do is you'll have some cards in your hand. You just got to put them down in consecutive order. Like, right, okay, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, but you can't speak it. Why are you doing it? And it's like, and then, it always has that reaction whenever you play the Mind, and it has that, thing that we look for in terms of like just one more turn.
Yeah.
That, the levels thing, I think it scales up remarkably well, like between 2 to 3 to 4 players.
It focuses like a group of players quite intensely. Like my partner's parents are not particularly they get distracted very easily. And I was really worried when I ran it with them that maybe that would happen with that. And that's a game, the Mind is not a game where you can be distracted. It it really laser focuses people into that one space. And I think that's really, really nice.
And having, again, hopefully we'll get to play the crew this weekend. And I think that will show you how good a Mind does its job in terms of like making a group of people not be able to communicate and have that. Because the crew, the crew is kind of like you're doing a lot more by not communicating. Like you're expecting to really have quite strategic conversations without saying a word, whereas a Mind is just a little bit simple. You're just trying to like out poker each other in terms of like ways
you can game it a little bit. Like we develop our own little strategies.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like
that's what I love about it. Yeah,
the mind. I think the Mind in its simplicity is able to get across that idea of no communication a lot easier. Like that part of like developing a language between you and certain other people. Like
it's also super thematic because like you explain that when the way I always introduce it is, okay, so we can all read each other's minds, and everyone's like, ha 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 ha. And then one game in, when you've managed to get through a round perfectly, everyone goes,
yes.
Ooh.
And I think that's like, again, another game we talked about, which is quite similar on the show, is Medium.
Yeah.
And I think that what Medium and the Mind do really well, and the crew, is when you have those moments when you genuinely think you might be able to read someone's mind.
That's what I mean, yeah.
And it's just like, maybe we can do this.
Yeah. Like immediately next round fell.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy.
It's got to be
Mind. I think Mind brackets games by Wolfgang Warsch.
I'm fine with that.
Because Taverns of Tiefenthal is a good bet as well, which you put on your list, because it's an amalgamation of lots of his other
pretty
games.
much,
It's like his greatest hits to some extent.
Yeah, and it is like it has been described as a warm fireplace of a game, and I completely
I think
agree.
for me, just because I did put it out my list, I think for the mind not to go over too much old ground. I think the best thing about it is the complexity that comes out of its simplicity. But also, it's fair to say we talk about a lot of board games on this podcast, and it's fair to say, Sam, you talk about a lot of board games on this podcast.
I play a lot.
There are very few of all the ones we've discussed where by the time the recording is finished, I've already bought it. The Mind was one of them. We hadn't finished the recording and I'd already gone onto Amazon and found it and bought it. And that doesn't happen very often.
No. I mean...
Chris.
XCOM 2, anyone?
I've got 5 in there at the moment. I'm doing well.
Dan's definitely the bellwether of this podcast.
Which would you go for, Chris? Out of your lovely list?
Well, Chris, there are two things that I just want to bring up in terms of maybe rule suggestions. It's both Chris, that's you, and Pete, that's you.
Hello.
Have suggested things that involve going out.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
So the antithesis of everything we stand for.
So if we were going to put a staying out activity or a going out activity onto our list,
could this be an honourable staying out?
It could be. I think it could be an honourable 11th choice out of these two things. Like I think yours is a bit easy to describe because it happens every year, Pete. Whether Chris is like a one-off event.
Sam, could we think of an outdoor activity quickly while they're talking about it?
Well, Bounce Below is one activity that we did all do and can be replicated.
I mean, on sofas and stuff.
Also, we did escape rooms as well.
We escape rooms.
Did do escape rooms. I mean, for me, UK Games Expo is incredible. Like for somebody who's been around games expos generally, a lot of video game stuff since when you and I went, Dan, the first time
back in Eurogamer,
back at Eurogamer Expo when it was at the Tobacco Dock, proper Eurogamer London, where we met. What's his name? The guy who did Left 4 Dead.
Oh, what was his name?
Chet Falasek. We didn't realise who he was until we started asking him questions. Like I've been around those for a while, and video game events for me have got to the point where it's like, yeah, cool, and you get to meet all your pals, and you get to know people in the industry, and you know who's going to be at them, and you know how they work and why they're nice. UK Games Expo is the one. UK Games Expo and to some extent Dragon Meet are the two expos that like I just have fun at, and UK Games Expo is so fun. Like it is super nice to be around. First of all, so it's a predominantly board game event, but it has like all the other peripheral stuff. So it is like, it also does RPGs and miniatures and more traditional like board games. So Rummy Cub is usually there a lot.
Like Doppel and like Hasbro.
All that stuff. And then there's like a competitive scene, which is massive and like it's never something I've ever been involved with, but is really cool. I discovered Burrows and Badgers there, which is like one of my favorite minis games. I've like bought so many incredible things there that I've never seen anywhere else. But the other thing is like, I've been to a lot of video game events where a lot of people pong, and like
smell. I thought you meant like play.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Whereas UK board, this games at UK Games Expo like is just really nice. The atmosphere is like normal people, and like they're all really enjoying the board game scene. And I think that like the reason I find it so exciting is because very often when you are really ingratiating yourself into a particular subculture or a specific medium, you can very quickly get into the realms of like ultra nerdery and people that aren't really us. Basically, like I love BGG, but there's definitely a lot of stuff there where it's like, this is way beyond my level and this is too nerdy for me. Whereas UK Games Expo is like people of all shapes and sizes and walks of life, and they're all enjoying this one thing. And it's always this constant reminder to me of like, their board games now are just so all-encompassing of loads of different kinds of people that it's like very enriching. It always like makes me very excited about being around this stuff.
I think that's a really important point, because I don't play as many board games as you guys do, and stuff like that, going to those expos, when I've been to a couple of them in the past, I've not always felt particularly comfortable
Part
because
of it.
it's kind of like I feel like an outsider. I don't feel like I belong here.
Yeah.
And you do have that kind of really hardcore demographic of the kind of the fandom that is very kind of if you're not in that, can be very off-putting.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I think the experience that you're having in terms of the kind of people and the kind of atmosphere that's there, which may well be the same kind of people, but the atmosphere that's being fostered is a very different one.
Yeah.
That would make someone like myself who isn't as deep in that area as other people would feel a lot more comfortable in that environment.
Yeah. I just think it's a great event, and it's very difficult to make an argument for it because obviously, like,
I'm going for the first time this year.
Hopefully me too.
hopefully you too, and hopefully you too.
Maybe, yeah.
So, you know,
But I'm happy for it to be an auxiliary 11th. Like, if you are going to leave the house, then
go outside to go back inside. Which
Go
feels nice.
go outside to buy the things they can bring back inside to play.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting you talking about like all people from different walks of life. I had the same thing with Dear Esther Live, which was a live orchestra playing the music from The Walking Sim by Chinese Room, Dear Esther, which was I saw it at the Liverpool Philharmonic. It was touring the UK, but there were people in that room who were fans of the game. There were people there who were fans of the Philharmonic, and seeing somebody, I know we made fun of it in the episode, which was I think 49, which was where
you're correct, Chris.
the start off at the very beginning, somebody just walks on, boots up the PlayStation, sits down, picks up the controller, then the orchestra get ready and play and things, and just seeing the game played out on the screen, but hearing the music, which is by Jessica Curry, who is one of my favourite composers of all time. She is an absolute legend. Her music, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, it's in my top 5 albums of work of all time. And to have that live, but also to see games in this context. It's not an annual thing. It's not like UK Board Game Expo, but I'm hoping that the popularity of this will generate more events of this kind. And I keep looking around for when they're going to do Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, because that'll be it for me. Once I've seen that tick, that's my bucket list done.
You'll be gone.
Yeah,
nice.
Be gone.
Good stuff.
We'll judge that when we get to the end.
I think so.
But I was just looking at the list while you were wittering on there, Chris, and I just noticed that other than War of the Ring and Taverns of Tiefenfall, every single board game we have out of this like top 40 are all cooperative board games.
Yep.
Which I think is quite interesting. One of which is The Crew, which I think is just, it is one of my favourite games of the year, one of the freshest and most exciting games I've played in a long time, but you guys, other than Chris, haven't played it. But I think Burgle Brothers is a strong contention for
I think if it's
being
not
on
on
this
this list is wrong.
Yeah.
We talked about in episode 1, so what we're saying is we kind of peaked.
Episode 1.
Such a good game. Like, listen to this. If you saw the description of a game,
Listen to this, everyone.
Here we go. Immediately, Chris is getting kind of excited by it.
because I literally went into Google and I typed board game. Hold me back. I went in and I typed in board game heist, and this came up number 1.
Sure.
And I watched a playthrough, and it is literally that feelings of a heist in a box.
Yep.
Not that I've done many heists, but you basically have
Many.
a 3-floor building, and there's different versions of it, and you've got these tiles that are flipped down that represent different rooms. You don't know the arrangement of rooms, and you basically have to sneak in as your crack team of robbers, each with their own set of skills, flipping tiles, which may be good or bad. You may trigger alarms, looking for the safe, and then cracking that safe, and then finding the stairs to go to the next floor, rinse and repeat, and you'll get stuff in that safe that will be a help or a hindrance. Yeah. But at the end of every person's go, there is a security guard on each floor, and they are moving to a designated location, which is on a card, and when they get there, you flip over and you find out where they're next going, and you have to try and sneak around them. And that is so satisfying. Yeah. People talk about Spectre Ops being like Metal Gear Solid, the board game, but for me, Burgle Brothers really encapsulates that.
And it comes in a small box.
Yeah, Tim Fowers is a genius.
It is beautifully presented.
Yeah,
and I think the other reason I think it needs to be on this is because it's indie as hell. Like one of the other things that I think that we're particularly interested in is stuff that is like outside of the big, like I like Fantasy Flight Games stuff, but like it is very like you already know about this stuff. Whereas like Burgle Brothers is much more, it's it's a small team and they're kickstarting everything, and it's all driven off of fan support and all that sort of stuff. It's not backed by some big French company that's like, funding all of this stuff and has a huge monopoly over everything. It's literally like one designer who's going to Kickstarter and going, I've got this good idea for a game, which I think is a huge part for me of the appeal of board games.
Yeah, I think it's on there.
And the sequel's coming out in May, the Casino Caper, which I've already backed on Kickstarter.
You have, Chris. You tell us regularly. So let's put Burgle Brothers on there.
Go on, pop it on. So is that 8 now?
That's 8. So just
okay.
two
more. 8.
I've got 2 on mine, which I don't think are going to make it to the top 10. I know they won't make it to the top 10, but they had to be in my top 10. So I just want to maybe get these out of the way now, because unless something has changed in the time since we discussed it, they're not going to make it. So those 2 would be Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton!
Remember, you can only do 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Fortunately, Sam's in control of the levels there. So we got Hamilton, which, as I discussed...
can do reverb on this.
Can you really?
Yeah, shall I do it?
I've just realised that we now have to pay royalty fees to both the Bee Gees and the Hamilton.
Well, you're assuming falsely that is Hamilton.
So this is this fancy mixing desk you've rented.
Okay, what are you going to do? Go on.
Turn it on. Hello. Oh, it's not. Is it working?
That's just repeating.
It is. Oh, Alexander Hamilton.
You haven't seen Hamilton, have you?
No. He hasn't. No. If I Were a Rich Man.
I've listened to the soundtrack.
Oh, that's all right then.
Am I back to normal now? Yeah, just about.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad that we hired this this piece of tech.
Anyway, okay.
So Hamilton, a phenomenal musical all about the American Revolution, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who also seen in His Dark Materials. It blew me away when I listened to the soundtrack. It astonished me when I saw it live. I've seen my fair share of musicals. It's by far the best one I've ever seen or listened to. It's just phenomenal. I know you guys haven't seen it or necessarily know the music like I do, so I know it's a struggle to get into top 10, but it couldn't. We discussed on this podcast, it couldn't make it into my top 10.
If people want to hear you talk more about it, Dan, what episode would they like to listen to?
Just off the top of my head, I think it might be episode 67.
Is he right, Chris?
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, 67 rings a bell.
So my other one, which I don't think will make it to the top 10, but let's clear it out the way while we're here, is Mary Poppins Returns.
Again with Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Are you sensing a theme here? So the reason I put this one on there was it actually kind of made me think about the films that I love differently, because it made me kind of think, I think we actually had the conversation at the time of why is it that we think of the best films being the critically acclaimed films, the films that make us think and all this stuff. Whereas
sad ones.
Mary Poppins Returns was just like 2 hours of just beautiful fun, enjoyment, like great story, great performances, and everything made you happy. I walked out of it kind of uplifted and all that stuff. And that's why it came in. That's why I put it here. Of all the things that I've watched and experienced, this has stuck with me, that I've just really enjoyed the entire experience of it. And it's not going to make it to the top 10, but I had to talk about it here because it did have such a change in my thinking of what are my favourite films. I think that previously my list would have been probably a lot more po-faced than it was after that film. I would think much more about the more light-hearted stuff, because just because something's light-hearted doesn't mean it's any less substantial, which I think perhaps sometimes when you look at the Oscars and stuff like that people look at as kind of a watermark for the best films. Rarely you get something going up for Best Picture which is light-hearted or comedic. You do occasionally, but it's very rare. And so you always think of, no, the good films are the serious ones about serious things with serious people. And sometimes I want to watch a film about a nanny who flies in an umbrella. It's fun.
That's what I want to watch
Fair
all
enough.
the time.
I think that Dan's right, it's not going on this. But I think that a game that should be included in our list is one of 2 of these games, Keep Talking Nobody Explodes and Trackmania Turbo. And I think one of those should be on our list for this reason, that I think it would be silly for our list not to have something on it which encapsulates what it's like when we're all played together.
I agree.
And we all have a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no one on this list has put Towerfall Ascension, which we played last night for a good couple of hours, and I think
Was it 2 hours we played?
Oh, I don't
Here's
know.
the thing.
Okay.
There are no rules, other than there's only 10 of them.
Well, Peter, you would need to drop one of yours to throw, because I'm not dropping mine.
I think we should put Towerfall on this list.
Well, in space of what? You got to lose one of yours.
You've got to take...
I got to take one of mine away.
You gonna lose Trackmania for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because we played both, didn't we, last night? But we spent much more time, and we had much more fun playing.
Here's the thing with Trackmania. I love it, and I think it's brilliant, and I think they balls it up again, but you enjoy it despite some of the flaws that it has. I mean, I literally stayed up until midnight trying to beat one of Dan's times. Yeah. Like, it is absolutely superb.
There was one time when I was trying to beat one of Sam's times, and I was up to about midnight, and I beat it by like 0.02 seconds. Yeah. And no joke, I literally ran around my living room in celebration because I was so happy. And then I turned it off and went to bed.
And the feeling of joy that gives is incredible. But it is, for me, a slightly mean-spirited joy in that, yes, I'm beating him!
And then it's the next week where you're just like logging on and going, please don't be beaten, because I can't do that. I can't do that again.
The next day we're like, oh, God, he found an extra second.
Yeah, it's just so I think in that spirit, I think we've all enjoyed playing Trackmania Turbo together with each other, and I think we've all enjoyed playing Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Sure.
Especially when Chris gets frustrated because he doesn't understand Morse code.
I understand the principle of it. I'm okay when it's on paper, but with flashing lights.
I fear I know where this is going, but I would have Keep Talking Nobody Explodes over Towerfall Ascension.
I absolutely would not.
No.
I think Towerfall is.
We played it on my Stag Do.
Yep. It's got that memory hook.
It's got the memory hook in it, and we played it last night. And honestly, the ups and downs, the fun, the laughter. It was like it's whenever we all meet together and we're in the same room together and we're playing something or we're just chatting and talking. That's what I'm always trying to think. What can I do that brings that about us? When that sense of competition, fun, laughter all in one thing, like that's what I'm always looking for, which I think is why like Cosmic Encounter is the board game that does that.
Sure.
Like that is what does that to me. It has, that lovely competitive edge, but also has this air of like, let's just muck about here and see where we can push the boundaries. But I think Towerfall is like the video game that does that for me. And last night was just
I agree. I think it is so mechanically tight. I think it is. You never feel like, oh, I was robbed. Like, you never feel like, oh, I was really let down.
No. Like, I think a really good thing about it is, actually, when we played it for Sam's sake, I don't think I actually played it for I can't remember why, but whatever reason, I didn't play that at that time. And so when we played it last night, I was kind of coming into it like, I'm not very good at these games. Sure. Usually when we've played kind of not similar games, but kind of competitive or cooperative games where you're kind of like Castle Crash and stuff like that, we've played in the Pastors group, and I've just been terrible at it. And I don't know why I'm no good at those games, but I'm not. And yet last night I was still winning sometimes. There was a few times where I was winning and games, I didn't really know how I was doing it, but I was. So the barrier for entry isn't high. You can jump into it with no experience. We played on the Switch. I don't have a Switch, so that was new to me. All aspects were new to me, and yet I was still able to do it.
The barrier to entry is really, really low. The skill threshold is incredibly high. So like we were playing through that game and we were like 6 or 7 games in before we were doing the stealing the arrows out of the air.
You were. Dodge, yeah.
Like we were, like I one of the little notification things that comes up between levels says, oh, if you hold down, you'll fall faster. Like I started doing that. There's a whole bunch of different, like if you wall jump but hold towards the wall, you will like essentially hold on to the wall without moving. You will just grip there. Like the different kinds of things you can do are so varied, and the way that you can put all of these things together, plus the high barrier of skill and the fact that it is so, the collision detection is so, smart and tight. It's absolutely like so, I just really easy to get into, but you can also get better and better and better and better.
And I think I just have to make a point out that this is made by Matt Makes Games, who also made one of the games on my top 10, which is Celeste. And Celeste it was one of the best video games I played last year. An incredible platformer, and you can definitely see the DNA of everything Celeste is in Towerfall Ascension, like in a way it plays and handles, and just how a genuinely good product it is.
I think it should be on the list.
Yeah.
I have. It's already on the list.
Oh, Towerfall. And what episode was it on, Chris? Can you remember?
I don't know why, Sam. I'm just getting a bit of a block with that. Can you help me at all? What,
is it 75?
It is 75. I mean, I was.
Hopefully, that's how many minutes we got left of recording.
Blood and sand.
I wonder why you were gesturing just to me.
Towerfall Ascension is 75. Episode 75. And if you want to hear about Celeste, it's 81.
81,
episode
yes.
71. I recommend. So one more space.
Well, I've just noticed we've got 3 things here that concern with mysteries, mystery narratives. You've got Knives Out from '93, I think. Sherlock Holmes Consulting
Not the year.
Detective, no, episode 6, and Return of the Obra Dinn, episode 77.
And Batman role-playing game.
Yeah. Was that a mystery? It's a mystery as to how we got through it.
Yeah, exactly. Is it any good? That's it.
It's not, no. Yeah, I mean, I think that Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is the best RPG that's not an RPG. I think it's an incredible it's an incredible way of you feel like you're a detective, you feel like you genuinely are solving the mysteries, you feel like you are in the world of Sherlock Holmes, because it is, sure, it's wordy, but that's how Conan Doyle wrote. Like, the whole thing feels really nice, really thematic. It's a thing that I've introduced other people to through you sharing it with me, Sam. It was the thing I got with my BGG Secret Santa. Mm-hmm. It's the thing that whenever there's somebody who's like into role-playing games that I want to play something very light with, it's the thing that I'll sort of say, yep, this is the one to play. I just think I think it's superb.
The only thing I'd say against Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, it's the only game that my wife has fallen asleep to whilst playing.
Really?
I've had that happen. I introduced it to my family, got 30 minutes in or so, everyone was asleep.
I think it's a genuine, I think the problem that Consulting Detective has is it's very much like you've got to wait for the perfect moment to play it and to introduce people to it.
Yeah. Or you organise it. It's a very we are going to play this.
Yes.
The issue I have, because I really do enjoy the game, however, I don't think I've ever had a playthrough where at the end of it, I feel good about myself. Because I love that. Because we will spend 2 hours playing this game and playing a case, and we're trying to figure it out. And we end up, when I played it with my wife, we when I play with her, we tended to kind of probably explore a bit too much, kind of look at all avenues, and then we come up with an idea at the end, and invariably we're wrong. And at the end of it says, well, Sherlock gets it in 3 clues. Yeah, and I'm like, well...
Yeah, but I like that.
Well, screw it.
Because again, it's like really characterful. Sherlock's not nice.
Yeah, Sherlock turns up swinging his around.
Yeah, he's like, I did it in 4.
And I've been smoking crack ever since.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's not. It wouldn't make it onto. I don't think it should make it onto the top.
I think I'm just looking at the things we've got left, and just I think what's making our list are just things that really are cementing what we like.
This list of our top 10 so far, our 9, is basically the way we feel about games and what the podcast is about, right?
Yeah.
So it's like Dread is about us being together. Uncharted is about a thing that we all share. Like The Good Place is talking about things that don't often get talked about. Pandemic Legacy is big, brutal...
sharing stories.
Sharing stories, big games. The Adventure Zone, it's a geek podcast. Stardew Valley is about, engaging with games in a way that is outside of the hyper-competitive way. The Mind is us all thinking that we know one another incredibly well and deep in our pockets, and we do, except for when we don't. Burgle Brothers is the first thing that we talked about, and it's this indie board game that we really love and champion. And then Towerfall is us coming together and actually competing in a fun, safe way. And so the 10th one, I think, needs to be something that is also part of that.
Well, so why not just the UK board games expert then? Because I can't.
I've got one thing left on my list, which is Oddworld New and Tasty.
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, so that's a hard no from Sam.
I can't stand it.
I really like it.
I've not really played it, so I can't really.
I really like it, and I would totally go to bat for it if I thought it would potentially stand a chance. But I don't think
but again, I'm just looking at that list. I'm just looking at. I don't think there's anything that there's a cross consensus of 3 or more of us. Really.
So I mean, if
batting for
Chris, I've only got one thing left, so it's made my mind. Chris, if there's one thing left on your list that you want to, what's the hill that you're going to die on your list? Same for you, Pete, and same for you, Sam. What's left that you would stand up?
For me, it's Return of the Obra Dinn. Yeah, okay. It's one of my top 10 games of all time. Mm-hmm. It just went in there straight away, and I knew it from the very beginning. Now, I haven't had that in a long, long time, because you play detective, East Indian Trading Company, 1807, the ship has appeared on shore, all the crew are dead. You have this magic watch, basically, that allows you to go to the corpse of a body there and press the watch, and you get like this frozen tableau that you walk around to try and work out how this person died and who they are. And you've got this logbook that you fill in. But it's one of those games where it's as clever as you hope it is, where actually, really cool. If you look really deep into it, the game just yields further rewards.
I think there is something in Return of the Obra Dinn, and it's one of those ones that I waited until I owned the Switch to play. I bought it on PC, and I will be buying it again on the Switch because it is that good. And I think that there is a part of what our thinking, because that's kind of what, Pete, you're absolutely right. I think it's kind of what our podcast, what these 10 things are showing. And I think we do have a bit of the air of like enjoying mysteries and solving puzzles. I think like the exit games from Cosmos, escape room games, like I think there is a genuine thread that runs through our show about like how we do enjoy like picking apart mysteries, exploring things like the Magpie Murders. Have been on a podcast episode before. And in terms of like, I think Sherlock Holmes' Consulting Detective is an incredible board game, but I think it's very much like of the time. I think Curse of the Obra Dinn is a bit more of an easier way of getting into the genre. I think Knives Out is a spectacular. I think the hill I die on is Cosmic Encounter. But in terms of like time, wanting to complete the list, and what I think reflects our podcast, Return of the Obra Dinn is that game for me.
Well, I'd like to take 20 minutes to talk about miniatures wargaming.
Oh. Sam, are you going to do that thing you did in the episode where we do the credits now and then people just stay on?
Can we not again? Can we not just splice in one of the 20 other times he's talked about it into this?
just let Pete do it, and we'll just speed up his entire 20 minutes into like a 10-second.
I can just gently fade him out.
The reason that I wouldn't include it is because it is a thing that, like, while you and I have shared it, Sam, it isn't all of us, and it is for me, it is something that I kind of do away from this.
I think it is a big part of what you enjoy, and I think it has a special place on the podcast because obviously
Pete talks about it so much.
Stop harping about it.
And it's something that you've also introduced me to, and like the way you and I think the reason why it shouldn't be in the list is that for me, Miniatures Gaming does what Stardew Valley did to you.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
So
did to him. Gave me lead poisoning. I think Obra Dinn.
Yeah, because War of the Rings is my version of that for you, because it's something that's very much for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Obra Dinn, I think, is
all right, okay. So if Obra Dinn goes on the list and makes 10, I think it's probably worth just like, because like wargaming is the one thing, Pete, that's for you. War of the Ring.
Oh yeah, totally.
For me, Cosmic Encounter. Hamilton, is that the one thing for you, Dan? So maybe your top of your list.
It's just like honorary mentions of stuff that didn't make the cut.
Not honorary mentions of the, but yeah, maybe if it didn't make the cut, the one thing that the hill that you die on.
If I'm looking at everything on my list that didn't make the cut, the hill I'm dying on is Hamilton.
And how does that song go?
So that's it. I mean, that's our top 10 in no particular order of this 100 of the topics that we've covered in this 100th episode. I think, Pete, you summarized it all really well in terms of like what those games mean to us individually and as a group. But if you're looking for stuff to do whilst you're staying in, then you can't go any worse really than playing Dread, Uncharted, watching The Good Place, sharing Pandemic Legacy with some friends, listening to The Adventure Zone, relaxing with Stardew Valley, challenging your psychic connection with the mind, performing a heist with Burgle Brothers, really testing the limits of those friendships with Towerfall Ascension, and then trying to solve a mystery, Return of the Obra Dinn. And if you must leave the house, then the auxiliary 11th option is the UK Board Games Expo.
Did we decide on that? Because I quite like Esther Live.
Which...
I don't want to throw that spanner into the works.
Mystery.
Which one do we choose?
It's an honorary mention. It can be both.
Yeah,
those are two very different experiences.
But one of them is replicate. One of them can be replicated. Everything on this list can be replicated.
This is true.
And whereas Dear Esther can't.
And also, we're going to be there,
and we are going to be there,
and we'll pat you on the back if you're there.
Yes,
whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not.
Just give us smacking people.
Yeah, we're working at security, so we have to pat everyone there.
Yeah. Not just on the back.
This podcast doesn't pay well.
I'm looking forward to that.
That was episode 100 of Staying In, with Sam Turner, Daniel Frost, Peter Willington and myself, Chris Darby. In these trying times, we hope that this special episode has been useful for you in determining which for you are the best things worth staying in for. If you want to hear more from us, rather than waiting another 2 weeks, why not go back and listen to the 99 episodes before this one? Now, you probably know your way around your own podcast feed, so you know how to subscribe and rate us. But did you know about our Steam curation page or our Board Game Geek profile? At Staying In Pod is all you need to find us on your favourite social media platform, and all of these links plus more can be found on our site, stayinginpodcast.com. The best thing you can do, though, is to tell a friend about us, to spread a little joy in a climate which is currently requiring us to be so far apart from each other. Look after yourself. Bye.